First of all, the fact that a child gets sick is a sign that you are parenting incorrectly. Emily always comes to my house unannounced every week and leaves her child with me. But today it was difficult for me to take care of her child because my own kid was running a fever. What are you doing? Just take care of her like you always do. You are usually just lounging around, so at least be useful for once. Right, don't you feel sorry for Kyle? Don't worry, my wife has nothing else to do. She will handle it. I finally lost my patience. Understood. I am permanently taking my leave. I pulled Kyle into the house and made a call. Mon? About that matter, I am coming over right now. After a brief conversation, I grabbed the bags I had secretly prepared and headed for the door. I am going back to my parents' place. I wondered why I hadn't done this sooner. Every week as Saturday approached, I felt increasingly gloomy. Emily would drop off her mischievous child and go off somewhere. And Steve, just like her, would leave without offering any help. I had reached my limit. But today was different. They might be tough opponents, but I had a plan. They needed to experience more than the hardship I had endured. I am Amy, 26 years old. I used to work at a publishing house, but now I am on maternity leave. My husband Steve works in sales at a trading company. We are the same age and met while working part-time at a convenience store during our student days. The workplace had many people our age, and the staff got along very well. We often went out for drinks with like-minded colleagues, and naturally, Steve and I started dating. He was the epitome of a modern college student, juggling studies and part-time work effortlessly and thoroughly enjoying his student life. To me, a relatively introverted college student, his lifestyle seemed exciting, and Steve appeared dazzling. I joined him for drinks at flashy bars I had never been to before, and on unfamiliar skiing trips, which were all great fun. After graduation, we both found jobs. Steve's hairstyle and dress code became more professional as he started working at a popular trading company among students. Meanwhile, I landed a job at my dream publishing house and gradually learned the ropes. We had a child about 2 years into our marriage. I was overjoyed as we had started to feel anxious about not having a child yet. But then an unexpected revelation: I was pregnant with twins. After waiting so long, 2 had come along, I thought. I felt twice as happy. Twin pregnancies are said to be hard, but the thought of how adorable the babies would be filled me with joy. Pregnancy was indeed a blessing. Pregnancy was indeed challenging. My belly grew larger than usual, making standing up a struggle. I often nearly lost my balance. During this period, getting up involved leaning on a table and saying, "All right, here I go." Steve seemed to be enjoying his work and didn't help out at home at all. With my belly getting bigger by the day, I was struggling with both housework and my job. Once, when Steve brought home something I had forgotten to buy, I overly praised him, and he seemed pleased. The next day he was more helpful, and I continued to praise him, thinking he had changed. But it didn't last long. After 3 days, Steve returned to his old ways, doing nothing at home. From then on, whenever I asked for help, he would dismiss it with a too much hassle. One day, Steve wanted new sneakers, so we went to the shopping center. I wasn't feeling well, but couldn't refuse the rare shopping invite, so I pushed myself to go. As soon as we arrived, he said he needed the restroom, and I rested on a bench. "Hey, were you here? Wait in front of the restroom." I just wanted to sit and rest a bit. "You look old and uncool. My belly is heavy, and it's hard. I'll stand up now, just lend me a shoulder." "You're like an old lady," Steve offered his shoulder insensitively. And I, as usual, said, "All right, here I go," reaching for his shoulder to stand up. However, Steve, in a teasing manner, moved aside, withdrawing his support. I lost my balance and fell. In that moment, I instinctively protected my belly, twisting as I hit the floor. The impact was severe. I had landed hard on the floor without breaking my fall. Steve just laughed loudly at me. "Pathetic. Can't you stand on your own?" Gradually, my pain subsided, but my ankle hurt more intensely. It seemed I had twisted it while protecting my belly. In pain, I lay there, but Steve just stood, doing nothing. A bystander, seeing this, helped me up. Still, my ankle didn't stop hurting. I wanted to rest in the car, but Steve wouldn't allow it. "It's too much hassle to go back to the parking lot." "I'll look at sneakers. Just wait here." He took a long time choosing and finally returned with a big bag. My foot still hurts. Can you help me to the parking lot? What? Are you dumb? I'm carrying this heavy bag and you can't even think of that? Ignoring his own lack of consideration, Steve retorted sarcastically. I hobbled to the parking lot. The pain worsened on the way home. I wanted to stop at a hospital, but Steve refused. What if it's broken? Filled with anxiety, I got home and immediately cooled my foot and lay down. Steve, unaffected, jokingly asked, "What about dinner?" Unable to stand, I settled for instant noodles. Can't you even stand in the kitchen? Pathetic over a little joke. Boiling water is such a hassle. Steve grumbled, but there was nothing I could do. My foot hurt so much I couldn't stand up. The next day I managed to get to the hospital by taxi. The examination revealed no fracture, which was a relief. I just needed to rest. But the pain persisted, making life difficult for a while. Finally, the long-awaited twins were born. Raising twins was even more challenging than the pregnancy. Everything required twice the effort. I needed double the baby supplies and had no time to rest. Time flew by. One Saturday afternoon, when the twins were about 5 months old, the doorbell rang while they were napping. It was Emily, a senior from my part-time job days. Steve came out of the room to greet her, oddly dressed in a suit on his day off. I thought you'd be here around this time. There was something off about Steve's casual tone. Amy, I need you to take care of my child for a bit. I was taken aback by the unexpected request. What? I didn't hear anything about this. You're just idling around anyway. You don't have any plans. Deciding on the date is the same, right? Steve seemed to assume I had no other commitments. But I have twins here, and I can't take responsibility if something happens. You're refusing my request? Her tone reminded me of Emily's attitude when we were colleagues. Back then, she was the oldest part-timer and never overlooked even minor mistakes. Especially with me, who had attended a prestigious school, she would always find fault, saying, "Ladies like you. You're on maternity leave and have time, right? If you're not earning, you should at least be useful. I have plans later. Just bring the child in." A 3-year-old boy peeked out from behind Emily. Reluctantly, I took his hand and invited him in. Emily was carrying a large bag that looked like it could hold an overnight stay's worth of items. I thought it contained childcare items and reached out to take it. "What are you doing?" "This is my stuff." "Where are the child's belongings?" "He doesn't have any. Just let him play around." Emily then said, "I'm heading out," and called Steve. He seemed ready and left immediately with car keys in hand. He said he was going to the office. Without any return time mentioned, I suddenly started caring for Emily's child, Kyle. Kyle was in his mischievous phase and seemed fascinated by the twins, constantly trying to touch them. I gently pushed his hand away, but realized I had nothing to entertain a 3-year-old. No snacks or toys, but having worked in a department creating picture books, I had plenty of those. "Kyle, let's read a book over there," I said. I started reading to him, but Kyle didn't pay any attention. He wanted to play games. When I said we didn't have any, he threw a tantrum, crying loudly. The noise woke the twins, and soon my house was in a state of panic. I spent a chaotic half-day, barely managing to even go to the bathroom. It was dark by the time Emily and Steve finally returned. Steve had driven them. "The two of you together? It's more efficient this way," he said. Kyle ran to Emily. "Did you have fun, Kyle?" she asked. He shook his head. "You like Mommy better. Let's go home and play games." Kyle's face lit up. "Next time, make sure you have something Kyle likes," Emily said sternly before leaving. "This place is a mess." Kyle had made a mess of our house. He touched everything, and with the babies, I couldn't clean up. Blaming the child? That's low. A mother should be able to handle this. I'm not his mother. What was today all about? Steve smirked. "Didn't you know? Emily is my ex-girlfriend. This was news to me. I dated her right before you, and since we parted amicably, we still help each other out." I was shocked. When someone's in trouble, we help each other out. Then, you should have taken care of him. Don't be cold. Are you going to ignore someone in need? The conversation with Steve got nowhere. That night, after putting the twins to bed, I was busy cleaning up the room and hardly had any rest. Since then, Emily kept dropping off Kyle every Saturday. Oddly, whenever she left, Steve would also be gone. He claimed, "I have tasks that can only be handled on Saturdays," but he never used to work on Saturdays before. Moreover, he always left in his car, even though he usually commuted by train, which was strange. About 6 months into Emily's visits during the coldest period of the year, the twins both had fevers. Unaware or unconcerned about our situation, Emily still rang the doorbell that day. "Please take care of Kyle today. You did buy his favorite snacks, right?" By now, I had learned to prepare children's snacks with my own money. It hurt to spend every week, but it was necessary. To prevent tantrums and crying. But today the twins were ill. "I'm sorry, the babies have fevers and I can't risk Kyle catching it. Is that my problem? Are you suggesting I leave Kyle outside in the cold?" "Of course not. I can't even think of leaving a child outside on such a cold day." Emily clicked her tongue in response. "Your parenting must be wrong if your kids are getting sick. Anyone's child can get sick, it's inevitable." "You're talking back to me?" As we argued at the door, Steve, ready to leave, appeared. "What are you doing?" "Take care of him quickly like you always do. You're usually just loafing around, so be useful for once." "Right, don't you feel sorry for Kyle?" "Don't worry, my wife Amy's got nothing else to do, she'll handle it." I finally reached my breaking point. "Understood. I'm permanently taking my leave." After pulling Kyle inside and making a call, I said, "Mom, about that matter, I'm coming over right now." After a brief chat, I grabbed my secretly prepared bags and headed for the door. "Wait, where are you going?" "What about the kids?" Kyle, oblivious to this exchange, was already heading for the pile of snacks on the table. "Looks like Kyle wants to stay here. You take care of him, and don't forget about the twins." "I can't do that. I managed for 6 months. You're a father. You should be able to do it." With that, I left the house. My parents' house was only a 5-minute drive away. Using Steve's car, I headed to my parents' home after a long time. Steve's calls and messages kept coming, but I ignored all the notifications on my smartphone. In the evening, Steve and Emily came to my parents' house. After leaving Kyle with Steve, Emily had apparently gone to her original destination. Unable to move, Steve was stuck with the children. When Emily returned, they brought the twins and Kyle to my parents' house. They had to walk, and it seemed like a struggle. Steve was visibly exhausted from his first experience with childcare, while Emily was still impeccably dressed. I led the contrasting pair into the living room. Emily was the first to speak. "What was today about?" "I can't believe you defied me." I expected Steve to chime in, but he just seemed utterly exhausted and only vaguely nodded. "Emily, since you're being loud, let's get to the point. After you left Kyle with me and went out with Steve, I asked my parents to watch the kids and followed your car with the one from my house." Steve looked shocked. "You did what, like a detective?" "Yes, I wasn't just sitting back and taking it." I had suspected Steve and Emily of having an affair, but the reality was more complicated. Steve's car headed to the station, and surprisingly only Emily got out there. Then Steve went straight to the office, as he said. I confirmed with his office that he did show up for work. They said he often left soon after arriving for his outside work. That day, Steve's car left the office quickly. A young woman was in the passenger seat, and they drove straight to a hotel in the entertainment district. I captured this in photos, clearly showing the car's license plate. "Steve, you've been cheating with someone from work." When I showed the photo, Steve tried to grab my phone and destroy it. My parents stopped him. His reaction was proving everything. "Who is she?" I honestly suspected Emily, but it's not her, is it? "It's a coworker. She came on to me saying I'm the best man ever. She was totally smitten with me. How could I pass up such an opportunity as a man?" "So you wanted time with her, and Emily wanted to go out, your interests aligned. And taking care of her child made you owe her." "That's right," I sighed. "Cheating during my maternity leave, lying to me and everyone at work." Steve stood up and yelled. "So what? You haven't paid any attention to me since the kids were born. You're not a child anymore, Steve. Shouldn't being a father be your priority?" "Father? Like I care. They're your kids. How can you say that? They're your children too. Stop your nonsense. Who do you think earns the money here?" "I'm on maternity leave." And not to mention, used to earn more than you. We're struggling now because of my reduced income. Steve was tapping the table edge, a habit when he's irritated. That sound was grating on my nerves. Fine, you can do as you please. Of course I'll take custody of the children. Custody, you mean? Yes, we're getting divorced. It's only logical. Wait, it was just a momentary lapse of judgment. Steve suddenly tried to appease me, but I was unmoved. A lapse of judgment? You think that's enough? I'll break it off with her. Please do, but we're still getting divorced. Why don't you understand? Steve's self-centered reasoning was endless. I was exasperated. I don't hate the kids. I just wanted you to take care of them while spending time with me. Spending time with me? You want the best of both worlds. That's unacceptable. I should definitely divorce you. I'll be demanding alimony and child support separately. What? I don't want to pay that. I calmly responded, if you refuse, that's fine. We'll discuss it with lawyers. The attorney fees will be added to the alimony. Steve was at a loss for words. I turned to Emily. So, I won't be able to take care of Kyle anymore. That's troubling, I'm busy too. Just then, there seemed to be someone at the door. I smiled to myself, knowing who it was. It was Emily's husband, Kevin. I had invited him. Kevin owns a famous restaurant in the area, something Emily often boasted about. That's how I knew how to contact him quickly. Kevin had a soft demeanor, typical of someone in the hospitality industry, but his eyes revealed an intelligent mind used to managing a business. What's going on here? He asked. Emily, you go out every Saturday, right? Yes, she replied. She said she's studying at school to get a qualification that'll help with work, leaving Kyle at a daycare. Is that true, Emily? I mustered my sternest expression and fixed my gaze on Emily. Steve interjected, it's true. I've been taking her every week. She's been making an effort even after giving birth. Don't be jealous just because you do nothing. I turned back to Emily and continued, after all, the daycare story is a lie. What? She's been leaving Kyle at my house every week without even bringing any belongings for him. I have twin babies and taking care of 3 kids has been very challenging. Kevin's face turned pale. Then, what happened to the money you said was for daycare fees? Kevin, being a businessman, is used to managing money. He had trusted Emily with the household finances initially, but took over due to her poor management. Consequently, Emily had limited money to spend freely. She must have been taking the supposed daycare fees as an allowance from Kevin. But the question arose, what was Emily using this weekly stash of money for? I asked, what have you been doing every week, Emily? Don't tell me you're having an affair? No way, I've only ever been devoted to Kevin. I won't be fooled by your excuses. I've noticed things around the house changing. Someone else's influence, perhaps. I accused. Stop making baseless accusations, Emily retorted, swinging her arm in frustration and spilling her tea, which soaked her bag. Oh no, she exclaimed, hastily wiping her bag with her clothes hem, but its contents remained wet. Spilled out. Out came numerous pamphlets, rosaries, and various trinkets. Kevin looked through the pamphlets. Fortune-telling. What's all this? Indeed, the rosaries and such seemed focused on bringing good fortune. I became interested in fortune-telling during my pregnancy. I once won $1,000 on a lottery number a fortune-teller gave me. Since then, I've been obsessed with fortune-telling and good luck charms. But after giving birth, I couldn't spend money freely or attend events. That's when I thought of this plan to let this woman handle childcare while I use my time and money effectively. Have you been involved in such dubious things? Steve also seemed surprised by these developments. I always thought you were studying. It's far more meaningful than studying. With this luck, we could become millionaires and live much more elegantly than we do now. Kevin was speechless at this unexpected turn of events. I'm appalled. You neglected our important son for such things? No, it's also for Kyle's sake. I even bought power stones that are supposed to make him smarter. Emily replied, arranging fortune-telling goods on the table and beginning to explain their effects. It seemed that she wasn't deeply invested in any specific group, just trying anything that might work. Kevin, after a moment of contemplation, finally spoke up. Amy, thank you for revealing this side of my wife. We need to have a serious discussion at home." He then firmly grabbed Emily's arm and led her to the entrance. Despite her continuing to shout protests that no one paid attention to, I decided to stay at my parents' house for a while. I had thought childcare would become more burdensome, but with my parents' help, it was actually more comfortable than before. In my spare time, I contacted Steve's company and revealed that his Saturday work was a lie and he was actually meeting his mistress. This exposed Steve for both lying about his work and having an affair in the office. Naturally, the company took strict action against him. Inside the company, rumors, some true and some exaggerated, made the atmosphere more unbearable for him and his mistress than the company's disciplinary measures. They lost credibility both inside and outside the company, making it impossible for them to work there anymore. Eventually, Steve called me and pleaded for mercy. "I'm gonna lose my job," he said. "I just reported the facts to your company. You brought this upon yourself." I replied, "I've reflected enough, so how about we start over?" But I refused. "I can't trust you at all," I said, and ruthlessly ended the call. I could tell Steve was suffering considerably. However, compared to the pain I had endured, his troubles seemed minor. He deserved to suffer more. Steve ended up leaving his job and couldn't stay in the same industry. Lacking the skills for other sectors due to his history of neglect and playfulness during his student days, he found himself in a difficult position. Now he's burdened with the payment of alimony and leading a joyless life. Emily, on the other hand, was handed divorce papers by Kevin. Custody of Kyle went to Kevin, with her visitation rights being minimized. Around the same time, another issue surfaced. Emily was accused of workplace bullying at her part-time job. Her actions and speech had long been overbearing. In an environment dominated by student part-timers, Emily, significantly older, seemed to have used her age to assert undue authority. Her fed-up, younger colleagues collectively complained about her, leading to complex negotiations. It appears the effects of her fortune-telling goods were non-existent, ironically leading to her downfall. As for myself, I'm planning to return to work next month. With the support of my parents, managing childcare seems achievable. Despite some nervousness due to my hiatus, I'm brimming with ideas for new picture books, particularly those themed around twins. The anticipation of getting back to work is overwhelming my concerns. My dream is to someday read the picture books I create to my own children.